I've had my Anbernic RG405M for 5 months now. Let's check back in on it. If we go back in time to my Anbernic RG405M review, I said it was probably my favorite pocketable handheld at that time. And if you're here just to know if that's still the case, then the answer is yes. Absolutely 100% yes. The 405M to me is still the best you can get in the most powerful pocketable handheld that's currently on the market. And just as a reminder, this device wasn't sent to me for review at all. I paid out of pocket, which was $170 plus shipping, if I remember correctly. And I think it's still around that same price now. And that wouldn't change any of my opinions anyways, but I know people have their tinfoil hats on and just want to mention it. But let's back up, because it's not all sunshine and roses with this device. There's a lot of issues that it comes with, and so want to be upfront with what you might be in for if you get something like this. A lot of people saw that the screen fell out of my device because I made a video on how to repair it. So if you're worried about the actual build quality, I'm gonna say that, yeah, for me, the device has been really good. Now, it's funny for me to say that when my actual screen fell out of the device. But besides that, I really haven't had any issues. The triggers are fine, the buttons are fine. My device as a whole is working perfectly. But the screen fell out. And so that's going to be an obvious negative because it isn't something that was limited to just me. It is something that's been happening to other devices for people that have bought this. And I mentioned the triggers. One of the other issues that comes with this device is that sometimes the triggers just stop working, as in doesn't make a sound anymore, no clicking, and in some cases, yeah, it just stops working. So as far as I know, those are the two major concerns when it comes to this device: screen falling out as well as triggers not working. And it all depends on you on if that's something that you want to take a risk on for $170. But here's the thing, with every single conversation that I've seen around the RG405M, it's always been the same thing. The specs, the internals, performance, all of that are perfect, especially as you add GammaOS and just upgrade your device in that way. But the one thing holding people back is that worry about the screen or the triggers or things like that for build quality. And I know a lot of people get mad at this, but for me, I'm still going to recommend this device because I think it's awesome. I think there's nothing else like it right now in this form factor, with this power, with what it can do. It's kind of unique in the market, and I think anybody would be happy with this device. But again, those issues really do take away from it. But no matter what device you buy, there's going to be risks and issues with it at any point. I have an Asus ROG Ally right behind me, and that has SD card issues. People's SD card readers are getting fried, sometimes even the card, and that's Asus, who's probably one of the major manufacturers in the world of electronic devices and hardware. And then if you want to go a little bit closer to home with a device that a lot of people have, the Steam Deck. There's a major bug with the Steam Deck where it'll lock you to 400 megahertz for your CPU and GPU, and you can't fix that. There's nothing you can do besides an RMA. So even Valve has that issue, and we can keep doing this with any major manufacturer. There's going to be a limit at some point as to what you're comfortable with and what that device might have an issue with. But in our Chinese handheld space with all of these sorts of devices, screens falling out is a normal one. It happens to the Miu Mini Plus, it's happened to the 35XX, it's happening on the 405M, but it's kind of something that's just in this space. And if mine was a bit cleaner of a break, I could have just glued it and put it back together. Unfortunately, mine was just kind of broken, and most of it was due to my fault. But either way, it just all really depends on what you're comfortable with as a consumer in possible issues. But enough about all that. Let's go back to the actual RG405M and what I think about it, why I would buy one if I was going to get one nowadays, and just kind of my overall uses. What have I been doing with it? And so let's talk about the actual form factor and ergonomics of this device. I can play my RG405M for hours without any worry. It's right now, I think, the second most comfortable device that I own, only slightly behind the RG353PS. in actual comfort. It's hard to really talk about comfort because everybody has their own version of what's actually comfortable to them. But as a whole, with the rounded sides, the back pads, and the actual just form factor of this, it's perfect to me, and I just absolutely love it, and I wish more devices would do something similar. And so then we talk about the actual controls, and there really isn't any deal breakers on this device unless you absolutely hate the inline triggers, in which case you can 3D print stack triggers if you wanted to. But the buttons feel great, the sticks feel great, the D-pad, while it's a bit stiff in normal Anbernic way, is still a normal D-pad, it works. Everything on this device just works. It does what you want it to do. And when we're looking at a sea of handhelds with so many different kind of negatives and deal breakers and all of that, it's awesome to have an actual handheld that really doesn't have anything like that. Before you even boot up the screen, the entire presentation of the 405M just feels fantastic. And that's what I like to see in a device. And so let's talk about what's changed in the last 5 months, because we're doing a revisit here and we want to know what's new, what's changed, what issues have popped up, and all of that. We've obviously talked about what the issues are in depth, and we don't need to go back into that. But since 5 months ago, we've had an upgrade in the form of GammaOS, which is a custom Android firmware available for this device that has given a lot of good upgrades to the device that the stock Anbernic firmware doesn't have. And so some examples of this is it's now using Lineage OS as a backend, you're using Retroid Pocket 3 Plus GPU drivers, L2 and R2 actually work in native Android games, and some other cool things that just make the Android experience a lot better for normal people. But let me be super clear on this one. I didn't have any real issues with the Anbernic stock firmware besides the over sharpening as well as the lack of L2 and R2 working in native Android games. Those for me were the two biggest things that I had an issue with. But if you look at it, native Android games don't really work well in this screen aspect ratio. It's a 4:3 aspect ratio, 480p. Android games don't look that great. So the L2 and R2 not working wasn't a big concern for me personally. Over sharpening was a whole entire different thing, and you can actually fix that through a script that I have a video on. GammaOS, while it adds a whole whack of good features, and I highly suggest you upgrade to it, isn't really a necessity in my personal opinion. You could get by with the stock operating system if you wanted to. But if you wanted to just go a little bit further and have a better experience, then 100%. Install GammaOS, and also donate a coffee to him because he definitely deserves it, and I'm going to have a link in my description in case you want to support his development experiences. Now, I've done a lot of videos on this device. I've done an ultimate setup guide, which is still the #1 setup guide for this device. I've done showcases on PlayStation 2, GameCube, Wii, Switch. I've done Pokemon Joy Play tutorials on how to get that working. So needless to say, when it comes to this device, I think I know it from the back of my hand, inside and out. There's pretty much everything that I've gone through with this device and can speak to it confidently. So what's been my actual use case here? What do I personally use this device for? And it might actually surprise you, but I don't actually use this device for a lot of what I even showcased. So that means PlayStation 2, GameCube, Wii, Switch, and all of that, I don't touch. For me, this device has lived in that Super Nintendo, PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, Genesis, and all of those sorts of systems. So anything really that's Nintendo 64 and under, minus the Game Boys. And the only reason I don't play Game Boys on this device is because I have a Miyoo Mini Plus as well as a 35XX, and I just like that form factor a little bit better for those consoles. And so I'm going to stick to what I've said a lot of times now. If you're looking at playing Wii, GameCube, 3DS, Switch, PlayStation 2, and all of those sorts of systems, this isn't the device for you. I wouldn't suggest it. A lot of those games will play decently well, but it's just not a good time. And you're going to spend a lot of your time just tweaking those systems to get them to run some games perfectly. And I don't know if that's worth it. But if you wanted to play everything from Nintendo 64 and under and perfectly, then 100% this is the device for you and you're gonna have a good time here. And so that just goes back to what I'm using this for. And for me, until we get perfect GameCube, Wii, and PlayStation 2 compatibility, this is the perfect device to hold you over until that happens. Because anything that's gonna come out in the next 6 months or so and at this sort of price range isn't gonna be able to do those systems. We just know it's not. The Odin 2, which is coming up pretty soon, and that's about $300 US, will do those systems and will do them really well. But we're at double the price of what this costs to get that functionality. I would highly suggest if you're looking at something that can cover you until we get perfect compatibility for those systems, then definitely grab one of these because I think you'll be very happy with it. The screen size, the aspect ratio, the power, everything here in this form factor, it's hard to say no to. In my mind, all of this blends together into one of the best handhelds that Anbernic has ever made and continues to be that. And that's all I got. I wanted to make a quick video just kind of gushing about the Anbernic 405M for a little bit, revisiting it after 5 months and talking about what's new and what's changed and what you can do differently. But at the end of the day, I still highly recommend it. It's still my favorite pocketable handheld, and it's still the one that I bring with me everywhere I go and play with it. Just grab it if you want it. If you've been on the fence, just buy it. I don't think you'll have any concerns with it. And this might be spoilers, but this will probably still be my favorite handheld of 2023 by the end of the year. But we'll see. Maybe something comes out that might change that. Please don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow, and hope you all have a good one.